Hey folks, you might be wondering what happened with the stock market yesterday and the 1,000 point drop that ended with a 588 point loss, which extended today into another loss of just, I believe, 266 points. It goes like this. As many of you know, many American businesses are dependent on sales in China for their revenue, particularly heavy industry businesses like Caterpillar tractors and other organizations that once sold the vast majority of their product here in the United States. Now, in this globalized, modern 21st century, a significant proportion of their sales come from China. You've all heard about how China's the economic giant. It went beyond the United States in terms of total exports, yada, yada, yada. Well, China's economy has weakened. Some would say severely weakened, and some would have pointed to their own equivalent of our Federal Reserve's efforts to stabilize and grow the China economy as part of the blame. Sounds like a conservative argument, right, that we're familiar with here. But that's beside the point. What did happen in concrete terms is that the fall of that economy impacted many American businesses and therefore their stocks. And that caused the fall. But not just American businesses, businesses worldwide. So you had not just Asian stock markets impacted, but European stock markets and American stock markets. And so we all fall together. But the stock markets fall, not the economies. And there's a reason for that. It's not just the circuit breakers that were invented and installed after the 2008 market crash, but it's also the simple realization that for some time, the stock market as a whole has not directly impacted the finances of many Americans who don't have 401ks and don't have investments and make their money in other ways. In fact, this exposes really an American economy that overall has been less dependent on people having stocks than in the past, for better or worse. So, but the bottom line is, overall, it's still a major factor that has to be paid attention to. But anyway, that's what happened. It was the Chinese economy having a drag on other businesses that depend upon it to some degree for their survival. Now, on this, is Donald Trump correct when he says that we need to decouple from China? Well, that's easier said than done. Basically, he is correct. But decoupling means reversing 30 years of offshoring of American businesses to other parts of the world, and also in that destroying 30 years of what is called, or what economists call, import replacing. That is, at one point in the past, China was a net consumer of all kinds of goods and services and operations. And because they didn't have any businesses to take up the slack and produce their own goods and services. Today it's different. They're more of a kind of a yuppie economy like we are. They buy goods and services from around the world. It's a different animal. But then it was a matter of it being a smaller, much smaller economic player that was ripe for multinational operations and other types of influences within reason within communist China, as far as one could get, provided you're able to get past Hong Kong. But as time progressed and China learned how to produce its own goods and services and grow its own producing powers, it didn't have the need to take, for example, European or any other type of business and have that operate full force unhindered. it could have its own businesses run by the state because it understood how to do that same means of production. Okay? That's called import replacing. And that means your economy, when you get to that point, your economy has matured. And you can have parts that are made in your country, whole products that are made in your country, but they consist of parts from other nations. Kind of like what happens to us, okay? But in China's case, they now have a healthy consumer economy that feeds into their production economy. The decline of both now impacts us. In the past, that wasn't the case. So what Mr. Trump is talking about sounds doable as an ethereal discussion. When you get down to the nuts and bolts of installing policies to make that happen, it becomes increasingly difficult. What we have to do, and if I were advising any presidential candidate, I would push for this, is have a way of subsidizing our own labor here so that it becomes cheaper to make goods and services here because our labor costs are made artificially lower. That's the solution.